Hi everyone, welcome back to my journey Faithful Compassion Hub. In today's video, we are reacting to a very meaningful teaching by Harold Klemp, the spiritual leader of Eckankar. The title of this talk is Lessons and Blessings. Even if you are not familiar with Eckankar or Harold Klemp, I invite you to stay because this message isn't just for spiritual students, it's for everyone whosoever gone through something confusing, something painful, or funny and wondered, why did this happen? Harold Klemp teaches through stories. Some sound simple, some humorous, but they carry a deep spiritual meaning, that kind that you can apply in your everyday life, no matter your background or religion. So today we will explore 1. Why karma is not a punishment. 2. How fear blocks our blessings. 3. What birds and skateboards can teach us about divine timing. And how the voice of God speaks through dreams and nudges. Let's begin and listen together. I'll pause and react in the middle and then again at the end.
Lessons and blessings. These come in various ways, and sometimes there's a lesson and a blessing packed in the same experience. Joan and I were at a grocery store shopping, and I just saw the skateboarders outside skating around, and they were just dashing here and there in the traffic and not paying a whole lot of attention. You know, when you're young, you don't worry about a whole lot of things. But Joan, then I went and did some other things in the store yet, but Joan happened to be outside then. And she watched the whole thing, and she said, I saw the inside part of this and she saw the outside part, so I'll just combine things. Management saw that the 3 skateboarders were putting the store's customer at risk, and so management asked one of the employees to go out there and just nicely ask them not to be skateboarding anymore right there. And so she came out and said it to them very nicely. And when she turned back to go into the store, the leader of them, he kind of looked around and almost with a sneer, and he looks, so what is she going to do to us? And the next instant, his hands flew up in the air, and he fell flat on his brains. Yeah, on his seat. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the helmet was on his head. Of course, he jumped up quick as a whip, and he dusted himself off, and very embarrassed, that his buddies should see his downfall like that. Jumped on his skateboard, and then he went tooting off, to greater worlds, I suppose, in his own imagination, because for sure there wasn't much going on in his world right now. He was pretty much a loser. Well, the blessing is that he didn't hurt his brains. And the lesson was, for us maybe, that karma is of our own doing. So when he went flip-flopping all over like a fish out of the water in a boat, he was just paying himself back real quick. You can call it the law of karma, the law of cause and effect or whatever, as if it's some great law that works rather arbitrarily, but it doesn't. For the most part, on the daily karma level, It dishes back what we dish out. So if you dish out ice cream, you get ice cream back. And if you dish out, some bitter drink, well, that's what you get back. Well, karma may jump right in there and do it for you right then, balance the books and that score. Or it may take its time because it sees, you're wearing padding in the wrong place, and so what good does it do, and wait a little while, wait till the guy is more exposed, and then get him.
So let's pause here. Understanding karma, fear, divine humor. One of the most misunderstood spiritual law is karma. Many people think karma is a punishment. You hear phrases like, karma doesn't forget the address, or they got what they deserve. Who can relate with these phrases? But this isn't how karma works. In Eckankar and also in other spiritual paths, karma is about balance, growth, and learning. It's not a knife that is standing over you with a hammer. It's more like a mirror that reflects your actions and intentions so you see yourself clearly. The skateboarder in the story mocked someone who gently corrected him. He thought he was above consequences. Then boom, he falls. Some might say see instant karma, but Harold Klemp adds, fortunately he had helmet. That's the blessing part. Even in our mistakes, Spirit makes room for grace. So lessons plus blessings equals growth. Also, did you notice how Harold Klemp called skateboarder a loser in a humorous way? It's not to insult, but to show how ego works. Sometimes we puff ourselves up, act like nothing can touch us. Then life gives us a humble moment. That's divine humor.
Yeah, there is good karma. Often when we say about someone, it's his karma, well, the feeling isn't, the understanding is it's bad karma. Karma is bad. Always bad. Always bad. Karma is bad. Like so. But it isn't at all. Because when we see someone who's enjoying the fruits of doing well, doing good in some arena of his life, then often what's the reaction? The reaction is, some people are born with all the luck. Jealousy and envy creep right in there. But if somebody's having a bad time, we say, well, he got what he deserved. It's his karma. So whether you're good or whether you're bad, you can't win if you've got a critic who doesn't have a good spiritual understanding of himself. Well, so much for the skateboarder. Lessons and blessings. Kathy is from Alabama, and she has a finch at home, and a finch is a nice songbird. There are many different kinds. But Kathy was getting ready for a workshop on change. And so the master was going to give her a real good example of change right in her home there. Well, Patchy, the finch, her male finch, most of the time he spends his effort trying to make the family nest more comfortable for his wife, Buffy. So it's Patchy and Buffy, Mr. and Mrs. Finch. And so one particular day he was pulling at the netting on his, around his cage. He was trying to take this and add to the softness of the nest, make it nicer and nicer. You know how we do. We've got a nice home, a car, a couple TVs, and a couple of computers, and on the internet and everything else, but somehow we want more. We want more netting. So he pulled at this for a while, and of course he isn't going to break that off. And then he saw a piece of a newspaper sticking up from beneath his cage, from the bars down there, and so he goes pulling at that, and he didn't have any luck with that either. So Kathy looked at him, and she thought, well, I'm going to humor him. So she gets a napkin, a paper napkin, she takes her scissors and she cuts it into a bunch of real fine shreds and hangs it over the bars of his cage. Well, one or two of the shreds, they, kind of fell down into the cage, so that, she thought, wow, Patchy's going to be over here right away, grab that stuff and slap it in the nest and make everything really homey. But there was a whole different reaction. What does Patchy do? He goes against the far corner of his cage and he starts singing his song, his "This is my territory" song. And so he was afraid to come, but of course he's going to attack that strange thing that had just now come to that had come into his world, his well-ordered world. So he gets all set to charge, runs up to the side where the little strips of napkin are hanging, the shreds, and he gets within 12 inches. And that was right a line in the sand, sort of, where his courage failed him. So he goes back to the far end of the cage and he sits there. And all of a sudden he comes charging out again, and again, and again, and again. He could get as close as anywhere from 12 inches, all as close as 8 inches, but that was it. And one of these shreds was hanging down a little bit farther than the others, and so he finally makes a dash, gets up there, grabs a hold of the napkin, pulls at it, and runs back to his corner again and studies the whole thing and determines, well, the thing didn't move. Didn't attack me, it didn't do any of that stuff. It's just sitting there. Maybe it's okay. So Patsy gets all his courage up again, resting in the fighter's corner like boxers do, and then his courage pushed him out there, and his resolution, he goes scooting out there, goes back, grabs that shred again, and it comes floating down just like a fluffy feather. In 5 minutes' time, he had cleaned up the shreds, plastered them into the nest, and his world was back in order. This is neither here nor there. And it really is neither here nor there. As we were coming here, I was talking to Joan. I said, way back in the Middle Ages, and the topic here is, what sort of God do people make for themselves? Like maybe Patchy had made his own God in the corner, a thing too fearful to be faced or to be reckoned with. We make gods out of the most foolish things, but we do it. We make God in our own image. Well, during the early Middle Ages, the tallest buildings and the biggest and strongest, most magnificent were the castles. This is where the lords lived. And they had life and death power over their serfs. So the castles were the largest and most well-appointed buildings in those times. And then a little later, the power of the church arose because the clergy in the Middle Ages was even acting as advisors to emperors. Emperors stood on top, then the clergy were in there, and then the nobles came under them, and then on and on and on down through the hierarchy. And so, of course, the cathedrals and everything else were testimony almost to the power of the church. And then I told Joan, I said, and you wonder what people have made as their God today. The biggest and tallest buildings are commercial buildings. Have people made money their God? You know, it's neither here nor there, but I began to wonder, how much do people worship money and the things that it can buy? You know, it's not money that's evil, it's the desire. It's that desire. That desire for it, the kind that's overwhelming. Deborah from New York tells of meeting Bill. He's a bioengineer professor, and Liz, his 11-year-old daughter. Both had sleep disorders. Bill had trouble getting to sleep at night, and when he did sleep, he slept poorly. He was always on edge. Liz, his daughter, was a sleepwalker. So here you got dad and daughter both having problems with sleep. So Deborah told him about singing Hugh, and when he got home, he told his daughter about how to sing Hugh to calm things down. Now, Bill's belief system had been that when you die, that's the end of it. You're gone like a puff of smoke. Poof, you're gone. The life you lived here has no more significance than if someone were blowing a puff of smoke out of his mouth from smoking a cigarette. Just gone. And so this scared him. It always scared him. He wondered, you know. He said, there's got to be more than this. But then worse, he felt, was that he was passing on this legacy of fear to his daughter, and that's why she was sleepwalking. One day Bill mentioned his sore neck, and Deborah said to him, has it ever occurred to you that it could be from a past life? You know, a lot of us have in the past had some problems with the powers that be, and in this lifetime then, you know, suffered neck pains and all the like, and wondered, well, where's that from? Well, it came from hanging around the wrong places, like trees and things. and scaffolds. Or sometimes it came, from the executioner's blade, all those cheery things. Somehow we cross the powers that be, and then in this lifetime, ooh, my neck hurts. So what does Bill do? He's the one who doesn't want to pass on this fear of legacy to his daughter Liz. So what does he do? He goes home and tells Liz, because he tells her, and then he thinks, boy, this will really scare her. I'm wondering, is he really not trying to pass along this legacy, or does he purposely feed negative stuff like this to her so to pass it along, to make sure, it takes root and grows strong, Well, she seemed delighted. For some reason, it rang a bell inside her, like she knew it was true. There was something to this past life. So anyway, they do the hue and everything, and Deborah said, you do the technique to sing hue when you're trying to go to sleep. Just imagine an open door and walk through it. And it was a good beginning, because now Bill could fall asleep. At least he could fall asleep. Of course, then he woke up in the middle of the night, wide awake as ever. And that bothered him, except there was one benefit that hadn't been there before. If there was something that had been puzzling him, he now saw the answer to it. This is something that hadn't happened before. So as I say, it was a good beginning, but of course then he'd have a ways more to go. Now his daughter, she did this hue technique too. She walked through the door and she began having these wonderful dreams where she slept. She'd sleep completely through, sometimes, for hours. And it was just pleasant. And so the first time this happened, the father, he sends an email to Deborah and he said, it works. It works. She's having really good dreams. And then apparently Liz had a dream where she was snowboarding, from skateboarding to snowboarding, okay? She's going down the hill on a board, and she goes down and she said, it was so real. It was more real than things out here, and it was just a lot of fun. Well, Deborah says, if you'd like to try to repeat the experience tonight, what you can do is do that again, but take my dog with you. Invite my dog to go along. Next morning, Deborah gets another email from Bill, and he said, Liz did just as you said, invited your dog, and everything in that experience, in that soul travel experience, was exactly the same, except your dog was running down the hill with her. And of course, soul travel, Bill understood this, when Deborah had explained it. It's you living and being aware, in full awareness, at a finer level of existence that you already are at. And so this was quite an experience for both father and daughter, and the lessons were good here too. They learned to play the Hugh CD. They said, that's worth it. And then they chant Hugh every night. So, lessons and blessings. Silas is a doctor there, as you know, in Nigeria. And he was at his desk. It was about 11:30 in the evening at night. And he was reading Paul Twitchell's The Flute of God. And then suddenly the blue star of the Mahanta sparked on the page. But this happened a lot when he was reading the Ek materials. And then he turned the page, and the blue light sparked again. This was very unusual, because usually it just sparked one time. So all of a sudden, he gets this urge, very strong urge, to go into his sitting room. So he leaves his office, goes into the sitting room. When he gets there at 11:30 at night, he hears this strange sound coming from the ceiling. Something was wrong. He knew it. There was danger. So right away, he called an electrician who lives nearby, and in a few minutes the electrician was there. He went into the room, looked at the ceiling when he heard the sound, and he ran out right away and he threw the master switch. And then he crawled up into the attic, and he poked around in there, I think, for a good 15 minutes before he came down. And he said a rat had bitten through electrical wires up there. It had electrocuted the rat. 2 wires had touched together, and the insulation on the cord was slowly melting. And so that more and more of this wire was being exposed and would soon come in contact with combustible material. And he said within a very short time, within a matter of minutes, of 15 minutes from when I got here, there would have been a fire. And it probably would have had very serious consequences for you and your family. And then the electrician said, "Doctor, go to church and give thanksgiving." But Silas said silently to himself, "The Mahanta's protection." The Master's timely warning had spared him and his family from almost certain tragedy. So the lesson is here. Some people say, well, I never hear the Mahanta. They may hear, but they ignore, because they won't listen to the nudges and promptings that are from a true source. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming. It's a joy for me to be here with you. I know many of you have jumped through hoops, hung over burning fires just to get here. But you did it. And I'm grateful that we've had this chance to be together. And I wish you the very best on your way home. And my love to you and all of yours. May the blessings be. Thank you.
This is the final reaction. Soul nudges, dreams, divine love. Wow. Let's take a deep breath. The story of Silas shows us how divine protection works. He saw the blue light spark, what Eckankar called the Ek light or the light of God. and felt a strong urge to move rooms, and that quiet nudge saved his life and his family from fire. How many times do we ignore that little voice saying, "Don't go there, call someone, check on the baby"? We call it a feeling or a gut instinct or something told me, but that's often the Mahanta, the inner master, or God, or whatever name you prefer, trying to guide you through life. Now, let's talk about Bill and Liz, the father and daughter with sleep issues. Bill believed that death was the end, and this made him scared of life and was afraid to pass this emptiness on his daughter. Through a simple spiritual exercise, singing You, the love song to God, they started healing. Liz went from sleepwalking to joyful soul travel experiences in her dreams. She even dreamt snowboarding with a dog. This sounds light-hearted, but it's a deep message. We are more than our bodies. We are soul. Soul can travel, learn, and explore higher worlds even in our dreams. In Eckankar, we don't worship dreams, we study them. Because dreams are classrooms where soul receives lessons, comfort, and guidance. Liz's transformation shows how small techniques singing You can shift energy and heal generations. You know, this part reminds me of something that happened to me a few days ago. I was going to the shopping center, and at home there was no electricity. I had left my phone charging at the office. I needed to withdraw an e-wallet. I wrote down the details on a piece of paper and I placed the paper on the office table. As I was locking the doors, a quiet voice said to me, "Check if you have picked the paper with the details." And my mind said, "No, you have picked the paper and put it in your pockets." Then 300 meters down the road, the voice came again, "Check the paper." That time I chose to listen. I checked my pockets and the paper was still on the table at the office. That may sound small, but those are the same inner nudges that the Mahanta or the Holy Spirit uses to protect us or guide us. And sometimes people ignore such little nudges, then find themselves in troubles and say, "Why didn't God help me?" The help was there, they didn't just listen. So yes, we all get these nudges, but the more your consciousness awakens, the more you recognize them, and the more you trust them, and the less you go wrong. Let me give you 4 key takeaways from this talk. Karma is not a punishment, it's a learning tool. The sooner we accept our mistakes, the sooner we evolve. Karma can be softened when love and awareness are present. Fear delays blessings, just like the little bird. We resist change even when it's meant to help us. The courage to face the unknown can rebuild our whole world. Listen to nudges. God often speaks in whispers, not in shout. Follow that gentle pull, it can be saving your life. Soul is eternal. You are not just this body or name, you exist before birth and you continue after death. And yes, dreams, symbol, and inner experiences are real. Thank you so much for staying throughout this powerful teaching and reflection. If you are new to Harold Klemp's work or Eckankar, I hope today's teaching opened a door for you. And if you have ever doubted your own experiences, dreams, and instincts, I want to tell you that they matter. Your life is full of lessons and blessings, but only if you are open to seeing them. If you are curious about singing You or learning more about Eckankar, for you, please download the You app on Google Play Store, HU. Then for more about Eckankar, please check on my bio. You will see their website. And again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe below. And until next time, may the blessings be.